I built this pirate ocean platform base in ARK Survival Ascended on Genesis Part 1, and so can you, because I made a full step-by-step build tutorial on how to build this base for yourself. Of course, it utilizes the newly added ocean platforms as part of Genesis Part 1, which means you can basically build this wherever you want and still have a nice base in the middle of the ocean. And since the Genesis Part 1 launch was heavily themed about pirates, making it a pirate haven seems like a clever way to go. And this base doesn't use any mods. You don't need to install anything to build this. It's just using the vanilla structures and blending in a few of the skins from the Bob Tall Tales DLC, and the option to use some of the Tides of Fortune skins, but you definitely don't necessarily need them, although the Bob Tall Tales one I would definitely recommend, because using the Frontier skin and the Wasteland skin is really how we get the shanty feeling, but you can definitely do it without, should you not own any of the DLCs. The base itself, of course, offers an ocean pen to keep your water tames safe, plenty of space for a bit of crafting and storage, and most importantly, just those pirate feelings and a nice platform base that you can build wherever you see fit. Hello there, survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial on my channel. As always, if you enjoy seeing these types of build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate all the support, and if you want to support me even more, consider becoming a YouTube member. And of course, feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd like to see me do down in the comments below. So to get started with this build, it's actually very simple, because you just want to place down an ocean platform, and actually we can place two of them because they snap together now. So we want to make sure that we get two of them right next to each other, aligned perfectly like this, to get started with our build. Then if this is going to be the right side of our base, that's the left side, and then this is where the main base is going to be. We're going to start here on the right side by filling in this platform. So what we want to do is start snapping these ceilings here, and these first two layers we can just fill in all the way on this side, and then we can continue that right over here and bringing this all the way back across over there. Then we want to have one layer going around the edge here. We want to leave a gap of 2 over there before we continue and fill that in, and then the rest of this we can fill in completely. So most of this is going to be completely covered, but we leave a gap here so that you can still get in and out, because there will be the option to have a water pen underneath, of course. And then over here on the left side of the platform, we want to do the first 2 layers all the way to the very end. And then to make an entrance into the water, we want to have a staircase coming down. This should be just above the water level, but then we want to use our quarter stairs to kind of expand that a bit further. And then we can finally add a layer of ceilings at the very bottom of those stairs, so that you still have a platform here to walk on, which makes it a little bit easier to access your water tames and still do some things, and of course easily get up into the actual base itself. Now we of course want to add a few details here, so you might want to have like a little half pillar right across there. We want to have one right over here, and then you can basically add everyone after a gap of 2. We can continue this around the edge if we want to add a little bit of detail here around one of the entry points basically into a platform, and you can decide for yourself if you also want to add them across the front here. We can also add in some beams around the edge of this platform just to make it look a little bit more reinforced. And then it's kind of up to you whether you want to use wooden railings or thatch railings. The advantage of thatch railing is that they kind of look a little bit more like they're stitched together as ropes, which I quite like for this kind of piratey feeling. And then we just want to kind of add them along the staircase and of course around the edge here, so that this is a little bit more secure basically. So we want to do that for most of this. Then up here, of course, we also want to make sure to have this beam going across from one side to the other. Then we can actually also add another half pillar right over there, because what we want to do is leave a little gap there so that we can also add a ladder here, just in case you fall in and you want to get out as soon as possible. So we want to have some rope ladders hanging in there, just like that, just as an extra way to basically leave the water. Then we could do something similar over here. We want to start by having these half fillers on the corners. We can add 2 extra ones over there, and then we can have beams going across the edge of this gap. Right over here is where we want to add the rope ladder. So again, just an easy way to get out of the water. And then around the edge of this, you want to add your railings. Again, I'm going for the thatch ones just because of the look, but the wooden ones will definitely work as well. And that gives us a second entry point to the platforms. You definitely want to add these early on, because if you fall in, this will be your easy way back up to your platform. And speaking of adding ways to get up, I also like to add them here along the edge, just to make sure that I can always climb up to the platform. So you might just want to do this early on, so that again, no matter where you fall off your platform, there should hopefully always be a path close by for you to get back on and back to safety. I think that is quite a nice thing to add early, so that you won't be disappointed and left in the ocean. Okay, then it's time to give a little bit of structure to where the main building is going to be. So in this corner, we're going to have a pillar raised up by 4 high. We're going to do the same thing here on the opposite side, and we're going to do them on these corners too, just to kind of give us a feeling of where this main space is going to be. So right here in the middle of both platforms is where the main building will be, and of course there's going to be many side buildings and additions to this to make it look more like a proper pirate shanty base. Okay, then we're gonna work here on the front entrance to begin with. We want to have our walls coming out just by 1 for now. Then we can have another pillar, but this one is going to be 5 high, so just a little bit taller, just to kind of give us a new shape. Then we can also come 1 forward with our walls, and again have some pillars here. These ones are going to be 3 high. And that's to make our entrance. We can actually fill up these walls to be 3 high. And what I like to do to give them details is basically we can at least start with these front ones to make them Frontier. And then here and there, we kind of want to replace them randomly with the Wasteland skins to make them feel more like a shanty building. Then here for the front, we want to take out the walls again. We can build them up just like so to give us a little bit of a shape. And we're going to make a nice entrance here, but we'll need some ceilings. So here we want to just place down our ceilings right like so, because then we should be able to snap a gate frame right in there. And of course, at the gate itself, I would skin it as the Wasteland skin, just for that shanty feeling. And once again, for these walls, of course, we can change them to the Frontier skins, and where we want to, we can definitely add a little bit of that Wasteland feeling in, just for the shanty vibes. Then we want to focus on the roof above. We are going to shape it up with the shallow sloped walls here. We're going to have all quarter walls connect in between, and then finally 2 more slope walls to finish that all. And then of course, once again, we can change these skins, and if we want to, we can also kind of integrate a little bit more of those Wasteland skins just to go for those shanty vibes again. Then up top here, of course, we want to take out our ramps to kind of add a little roof on top here, just like that. And if you want to, of course, give this a bit more detail, you want to make sure that it sticks out over the edge, as well as has a little bit of an overhang going on the front here. And then along the top, we want to add in a shallow sloped wall and then some railings around it, or on top of it, just for some extra character. And especially once we change these to the Wasteland skins, as well as these roofs, this will give us a nice look here for that front entrance. Again, embracing those shanty feelings. Then we want to raise up these walls all the way to the top of those pillars on the outside. We can do the same thing there over on the other side. And after the first two pillars, we want to make sure that we add a beam in there. The first layers we can then change to the Frontier skin. And again, we can blend in a little bit of Wasteland if we want to go for the more shanty feeling vibes. Then on top of those, we want to have our sloped walls or normal ones this time. And then we also want to follow this shape. So that means that we can add in a few of these right along the edges. Then we can also use our quarter walls to fill in these gaps. We want to have two normal walls in the middle, and here along the edges we want to add our window frames. Then of course we can add in the actual windows themselves like this, and you could make them look like the Tides of Fortune ones or any of the other skins, really, whatever you prefer. And then here along the top, we want to have our shallow slope walls again, and then our quarter walls to fill in the rest of the shape and kind of form the top of the building, which kind of emulates a shape of a ship. Then here along the outside, we already want to shape up the roof a little bit. We're going to flip around the roof though, and we're going to have two of them over here and two of them over on the other side. Then we can go to the ramp, still keeping it upside down for the look. And then finally we can have our ceilings, and we want to make sure that we snap them like this, also upside down, because then the texture here on the roof are kind of all the same color, and that looks a little bit nicer. Then we can take out our thatch railings again, and what we want to do here is basically add them here underneath as a little bit of extra details. And we can do that for all of the roofs and ramps. And here under the ceilings, we want to flip them around before we add them in. And yeah, this just will add a little bit of extra character and detail to the front of the building, which we have now completed. So this is going to be the entrance of the main building that we have. So then we go around the corner, and we're going to start focusing on this side of the building. We'll start with adding these walls to be 4 high. Then we can go across. We want to have 4 of them sticking out so that we can bring this one back down in. We can continue this across the top before bringing this down to the ground. So this kind of shapes up this side of the building. We want to take out all pillars and raise them up 3 high over here. Same over there. And then have the beams coming across the top. Then over here, we want to snap in a gate, and of course the gate itself. And then we can skin those again to the Wasteland cosmetic so that we have another easy way to enter the base. Over here, of course, we're going to build a little addition. So what we want to do is bring out our wood pillars. We want to raise them up to be 2 high. And in this case, you might actually want to change them to the Frontier skins. We can do the same over here for the ones on the inside, just to kind of set them apart. And then we want to bring out our beams after 2 high. We want to continue that line all the way across the base, which also means that we can skin the parts underneath to be the Frontier skins. And again, if we want to go for those shanty vibes, we might want to blend in a few of the Wasteland skins just to kind of randomize that a bit more. Then here in this side building, we want to have a door right there. We want to have a window here in the middle before we fill up the rest of the building quite normally like this to just give it a little bit more shape. And then we can have our slope balls going back into the build. We can skin all this with the Frontier skins just to kind of set it apart. So this entire structure will be the Frontier skins. And then we can add a nice roof across the top. We can have, of course, a little bit of an edge with our quarter roofs all around it. There we go. And we want to skin these to be the Wasteland ones, because that's just a very nice looking one for the shantytown feeling, especially since we can add some broken pieces to it just to randomize it a bit more. Then, of course, we also still want to add in the window as well as the door. So we'll do that right away, and then you can kind of choose what you want to go for. This is definitely a great look, but you can also go for the Tides of Fortune doors, depending on what you prefer and what you'd like. Both of them definitely have a nice look to it. And with that, we kind of have the whole side of the building here. So then what we want to do is just to bring out our roofs and make sure that we continue this all the way across from this one side to the other. You can of course do the same thing on the next layer here. Continue this all the way across, and we can do that up to the top of the building. So we'll just go across like that, and then of course finally these 2 layers of ceilings, we can also start to add that in straight away, which instantly will give us a lot more feeling for what the building is going to look like. Okay, so we can go around the corner once more, and we'll start focusing on this side of the building. So over here we want to raise up these walls to be 4 high, right next to those pillars we already placed down. Then we want to add another pillar that is 5 high in this case, so we can add that in right away. And of course it also means that we can have our slope walls on top of that to follow the shape of our building. Then we want to have 2 walls coming out to the front, the same over here, and then we can have 3 pillars here in the middle and 2 pillars right at the front. The same thing here over on the other side, which also means that we can raise these up to be 2 high here, and then those ones we can raise up to be 3 high in total. Of course, this pillar only needs to be 2. And then on top of these ones in the front, we can actually add a half pillar right there, as well as some beams going across from one side to the other, as well as here around the side back into the building. Of course, we want to have a beam going across over here. Okay, then we can start by adding in some ceilings. So this layer, we want to add in some ceilings, since that's going to be a balcony here in front, but also on the inside, it's going to be the second layer of the building. Then over here, we want to add some windows. So we will have 2 of them here right on the corners. Then we can have some water walls right next to it, just like so. And then we can have a double door right there in the middle, so that you can easily access this balcony, of course. And then above that, we want to kind of add the shape of the building. So we'll start with those slope walls, normal walls there, and then of course more slope walls right above it, which also means we can fill in the double door as well as these windows to make sure that they are in place. And yeah, again, we can use the Tides of Fortune skins if we want to, but we can definitely also, especially for the door, use the shanties or the wasteland skin for the shantytown feeling. It's kind of what you prefer more. All of them look pretty nice in general. Here along the sides, we want to add in a beam. We want to continue that beam across. We can do that like this, and then have a half beam right over there. We can then also take out our wooden pillars once more, add them over here just to give this front building a little bit more structure. And then we want to take out our roofs. So we have our roofs going up across the top over here, just like that. And then we can have our water roofs along the front just to give it a little bit of an overhang across the edges. And then here along the very edge, we want to have some ramps, quarter ramps, just to give it a little bit of a curve. And the whole roof, we want to change to those wasteland skins again for those shanty town feelings. And if you want to, of course, you can have some of these being the broken variants, just to add a little bit more character to it all. And then here at the very top, we want to add in our shallow slope wall, which we can then also change the skin of. Then here for the first layer, the first 2 walls, we can of course skin those to be the Frontier skins, and we can blend in a little bit of the wasteland one if we want to add a bit of character like we've done for most of the entire build. And then on the balcony itself, of course, we want to make sure that we add our railings in. just to make sure that it is completely secured. Along the top here, it's fairly easy. We want to add in these slope walls, of course, to follow the shape of the building like this. Then over here in these corners, we actually want to add in some windows, which we can also, of course, fill up with some actual windows themselves. Some shallow sloped walls right on top of that. And then we can have our water walls connecting up with the two separate parts. And again, of course, we can skin those windows with the Tides of Fortune one or whatever one you prefer. Then over here on the inside this layer, we actually want to start by going around the edges with the walls. We can have our quarter walls down here, the other ones up there, and then a double door frame in the middle with the door so that we can use this as the entrance. We want to skin that door, and then of course these first two layers we can actually all skin to be the Frontier skin. And once more, we can of course also blend in a few of the Wasteland skins just to kind of get that shantytown feeling. But that's not all, because we want to give a little bit more shape to this. So we want to have our quarter walls here in these corners, then our shallow slope walls meeting in the middle, and our normal slope walls right underneath there. Then of course we can take out our roof, we can add that right along the side, then our ramps, just to give a little bit of a curve to this place, and we can all skin that to be the Frontier skins, which will give a really nice shape to this entrance, make it a little bit nicer. And we also want to skin those ceilings as well as the ones on the inside eventually. But yeah, there we go. That is already looking quite nice as an entrance for this side of our building. And then we also want to expand this a little bit by creating a nice little overhang. So two of those ramps over here, and then a little edge of quarter ramps around the edges. Then underneath we can of course add in all support, so a full pillar and then a half thin pillar, just to give yourself like a little place where you could have some storage, a little bit of crafting, and add some character to the build itself. Then over here we can actually also build something. We want to have our thin pillars right on top of these, and then above those we want to have those half pillars just to give it a little bit of shape. Then we will take out our ramps, so just like this. We want to find the right snap point if it will let me, otherwise we can place those temporarily, then actually place down the ramp, and we can create a nice little roof over here that can connect all the way up to the building, just like that. And over here we also want to continue it a little bit further, and around the edge we want to add some water ramps, and we can do that all the way around the side over here just to expand it just that little further. And of course on this side we want to do the same thing, integrated it with the building and sticking out from those initial pillars. There we go. And of course on top we want to have that shallow sloped wall. Then on top we want to have our railing, and we can actually have these railings going all the way across the top of the building. We want to skin these to be the Wasteland skin, as well as the one on the front, and the entire roof made out of these ramps we can also skin for that more shanty feeling, which will be a nice contrast from the normal wood as well as the normal roof of the main structure. And this basically gives you a little bit of a overhang, a little bit of a work area that you could utilize in whatever way you see fit. We also want to have some pillars on this side, so we're just going to add a few of those in like that to make sure that it is all nicely supported in here. Then to add in some additional details, what we can do is have our slope walls going across the tops like this, basically giving a little bit of extra shape to the whole building. There we go. Then we can also take out our railings, add those underneath again, still to add some more character and shape to the build. And then especially once we start skinning these, I think it really all comes together. Now, the slope walls, you could definitely blend in a little bit of Frontier skin if you want to have that randomized pattern. But all in all, it just makes for a nice addition here to the side, kind of integrates it a little bit more with the opening to the water pen and makes it a less boring and a more interesting looking shape. And then we have one side left of this main building, so we'll take out all pillars again. We want to make sure that after a gap of 2, we have a pillar going all the way up, another one over here, and then finally another one right over there. This kind of divides this up into different sections. Then to start filling in this wall, it starts out relatively simple. The first 2 layers we just want to fill in, the next one as well. Then for this one, just the top. And then the last one we can fill in all the way. This one over here, it means that we want to create a nice doorway. So we'll have all quarter walls before we add in the double doorway itself. And of course, have the doors in there. And yeah, once again, we can skin them either to the size of Fortune one or the Wasteland one, depending on what you like most yourself. And then, of course, these first 2 layers, we want to start skinning to be the Frontier skins, but then afterwards we also definitely want to blend in a few of these Wasteland skins just to kind of make it look more like a proper shanty building, of course. Then, funnily enough, right above this doorway, we want to add another one. So once again, we can add these in, then add the double doorway, and of course the doors themselves, so that we have an access point up on this layer. We want to have some half beams or across the sides here, so that you can still kind of have those supports. And then here around the outside, we can add in our beams all the way. And then over here, just short of the end, we want to keep that one open too, because this is where we can add a door frame itself. And then we want to add 2 windows right next to that before we add in a normal wall. And we can also have the normal walls all the way across here to fill in the remainder of this side. Then, of course, we can take out all doors and windows, add them in, add in the door over there. And that's just to get us started. Of course, we can skin those doors and windows with the Tides of Fortune skin. Then before we continue here on the outside, we're going to focus on this inside layer. So we want to expand these ceilings just all the way across this layer. And then we'll have it too wide over here. We'll leave a gap over there for a staircase. And we can add in this all the way across to the end. Now, technically, of course, you can fill it all in, but especially if you want to have some bigger structures in here, it is probably pretty valuable to leave this open. So what we're going to do in that case is have these beams going across the edge here, as well as the edge here of the staircase, just like that. Then we want to take out our half beams, add those in, and then of course we can also add those half pillars all across with a gap of 2. And then we can also have some of our railings. You can choose yourself again whether you want to use thatch or wood. In this case, on the inside, I prefer to use the wooden railings. There we go. Then we actually want to add in our staircase. So right over here, add our stairs, add a little half pillar at the end, and of course our railings to get back up to that layer. So yeah, this way you have access to this layer. You can still build a little bit on it, and you have access to these doorways, where of course we're going to expand with a little balcony. So here across we'll have a balcony that will also meet up with this layer of the building, where yeah, we're actually going to have a little build sticking out. Here on the outside of the balcony, we want to have a half pillar there. Then we want to leave a gap of 3 before the next pillar. We can then have the beams here around the outside. We can then take out our thatch railings again that I like, and we want to use them over here. Then we can also add in some details underneath with the scaffolding, making sure that we have one there and another one coming from that pillar, just so that it looks like the balcony is being properly supported. Then for this building, we want to bring out our walls by 3 and then make it 2 high. We can do the same thing over here, but we're going to have some windows. So we're going to start with this shape. that I can add some windows right there in the corners. And of course, we once again want to take out the actual windows. Be sure to add them in here, and we can skin those as well to get the right look for it. And then this building itself, we want to actually skin with the Frontier skin to get that nice texture. And at the very end here, we want to add in some pillars, and these pillars we can also skin to be the Frontier ones, so they match the rest of this little side building. Then over here we can take out our quarter walls, add them in at the alternative right on top before we add in a pillar, which again we can make look like the Frontier skins. We can also just fill in the top here with the walls and skin that too, but we want to make this side look a little bit more interesting. So first of all, we can have these quarter walls going up, then we can have our pillars once again, and then we actually want to take out a little quarter ceiling, add them on the corners. Definitely want to skin those to the Frontier skins, and then take out our beams to go across from one side to the other. And on top of that, we want to have our shallow slope walls just to give a little nice shape above this entrance. And then of course what we want to do is take out our ramps and just add them in right over there and skin those to be the Wasteland skin. And then of course here in the middle we want to make sure that we add actual or door frame. There we go. And of course, inside of that, we want to make sure that we have the door. And in this case, I would skin that to be the Wasteland skin. And if we want to add a little bit of extra detail, we can have a railing on top of there that also gets skinned to the Wasteland one. Then we can take out our walls. We can actually expand this a bit further. We can also expand this on the outsides just to give ourselves a bit more space. Which also means we're going to give it a bit more space here at the front, as well as these middle to expand that even further. We definitely want to have these ceilings all be the Frontier one here on the outside. The inside, I'd probably also change all of those ceilings to the Frontier textures, just because I think they look a lot nicer. We then want to bring out our scaffolding. First of all, we can add a nice support over here, as well as a nice one right over there. So we want to do that for both of those corners, kind of supporting what comes from it. And then over here, we also want to make sure that we add another one of those scaffolding pieces before we add in our thin pillars, just to make a little support here for that balcony. We can have our half thin pillars on top of that, just like so. And then taking out our railings again, we can add them around this little balcony that this forms. And here along the side, especially if you want to have the bounty board on this wall, we want to make a little addition with our ramps, and then taking out our quarter ramps to just add a little extra layer in front of it. And then what we want to do is take out this half pillar, make sure that we add that in here, and then a full thin pillar so that we have the full support there. And then this is a perfect place to hang your bounty board and maybe add some cozy details in the corner and have the marketplace right over here. That's what I would recommend to really make this corner shine. Taking out those slope walls here and of course integrating them into our quarter walls just like that, and having a nice doorway in the middle, which of course we also want to fill in, and we can even skin this. We also want to skin all those walls to be the Frontier skin, and add those slope walls above it, also change those so that we get a nice little house building right out the side of the building. Then we can take out our roofs over here. We can add them here along the side, as well as this top layer right over there. On the other side, we can add this one in all the way across the top. And then the bottom layer, we just want to leave this one over here. We can add in a slope wall right over there. Now, if you want to have a fireplace, I would recommend at least having one of these walls You can continue it all the way if you want to have some more straight walls so you can actually place things down. But at the minimum, we want to create this little corner. And then right next to that, we want to actually add in a little door frame so that we can have a door in there. Just so that, of course, you get access to this balcony. Well, because why wouldn't you? You want to make sure that we have this all integrated into the rest. Then, of course, we can take out all quarter roof pieces to make sure that we add them here across the front for a little overhang. And then, of course, adding the shallow slope wall here, as well as our railings, just to give this a bit more detail. We can bring this all the way to the end. The last one will need to be a half railing, and we can skin those to the wasteland skins for a nice look. And we can also bring that across for the entirety of the roof. Of course, once again, we might want to play around with some of these variants to just make sure that we have nice holes. Makes it look a little bit more shabby, which is exactly what we want for this type of build. Of course, we can also skin the roofs over here on this side of the building. And once again, I would really recommend going around, add a few of these broken pieces in there. Then we can flip this around and add this all the way around the edge here, sticking out by one, and then adding 3 over there. And then from here we can continue it once more. We can take out our ramps and add in this final layer to make sure that we have this roof going all the way across. And to blend it in over here, we want to take out our triangle roof pieces, make sure to get the corners and fit it in right over there so that it all blends together quite nicely, which gives us this nice side building of the main base, which already looks quite nice, but there's a few more additions that we want to make. Now we want to take out our thin pillar right here on the corner. So in the corner of this triangle or corner roof, we want to have thin pillars, 2 thin pillars, leave a gap of 2 and add 2 more. Then we want to leave another gap to this way, which means that there's 3 thin pillars right over there. And then on top here, we want to make sure that we have a 2x2 platform, which means that we can add a pillar to this final corner and have this support come all the way down from those ceilings. We'll take away that one. But this is not the entire shape that we want. We then want to add in some triangles to the edge of each side, just to give us a little bit more shape, and then adding in or beams around the outside to kind of reinforce this platform that we'll be working on. And then, of course, as a way to easily access this, we want to have our roped ladders, and we can get these coming down from here so that you can still easily get on top of this platform right up top. For the roof that we want to add over this, we're going to add 1, 2, 3 pillars, and then from that we want to actually add in this temporary piece just like that, so that we get this snap point and we can place down our triangle roofs just like this. We're going for the thatch feeling here. Then we want to bring out our full roofs. We can of course have them go outwards from that inner top circle, and we want to do this for all of the sides, of course, before we fill in the gaps with our triangle roofs, just to get a nice round roof for this little tower that we're working on. Then we can add some of these pillars on the very corners to make sure that we can actually support this building. And now that we've done all that, we should be able to take out these temporary pieces just to clear up the space. And of course, then we can take out our thatch railings once more and add them around the sides. It is good to have a roof over those heads. Thank you so much, Helena, for that interruption. There we go. And once we've done that, you can see we have some nice supports. You can add a nice bonfire from the wasteland lights right here in the middle if you want to, or just, well, use it as a bedroom or whatever you see fit. But it is a nice addition next to the little build we have, but we do want to give it some more support, so we will take out all scaffolding pieces, and we want to have these corners going in like that, but also here around the inside. So we want to have plenty of supports going on, not just for the square on the inside, but also around the outside, just to make sure that it looks like that this little platform is actually properly supported. We can then take out our railings to add them underneath here. Actually, we need one more scaffolding piece right there before we continue adding in our railings underneath these scaffolding pieces. And this is just gonna give it a little bit of extra depth and just gonna reinforce it that extra bit by doing this all around. And then we can take out the wasteland skins again, and we can actually skin these railings to be those spikes. They will match a little bit better with the wood of the scaffolding pieces and kind of bring that shanty town feeling look back to the building a little bit more. And what I would also definitely do is change the skins of these ceilings to the Frontier skins, because I just like the wood a little bit better, especially for ceilings. And with that, we have a nice little tower. Now, if you want to have like a little flagpole on top, of course, we can add a few of those thin pillars. And with that, you can see we add a little bit of height to the building, and it really adds a lot of character to our build. There's a few more details around the building. First of all, we also want to have these railings on the bottom side of this side of the building. Flip those around to make them fit in, so that we have that side also completely detailed. And for some additional details, what you might want to do is have a railing right there. Then we can make it go down a little bit. Then it can go straight before it goes back up, and just like this. And then if you want to make this look a little bit nicer, you can add an extra layer in it. Kind of looks like there's a net hanging down from the side of the building, which I think adds a little bit of extra character to it all. Then we want to make some extra ways to get in and out of the platform and kind of create some docks for you around, whether you want to park your ship or just your ocean creatures. So over here for the main entrance, we want to take out our ceilings and add this platform to be 4 by 2. Make sure that it is aligned with the middle of your platform, of course. And then here off the sides, we want to have some stairs coming down like this before we once again take out our ceilings, and we can add a little bit more. Basically, you can go as far as you want to, of course. I've gone at least out by 6, and we can do the same thing on the opposite side, just to give you some decent sized docks to work with. We want to take out our half pillars, add them every 2 ceilings on the corners, just like this, just to give it a little bit more support. Then of course we can also add in the beams to make sure that it looks even more supported, and we can go all the way around the very edge. And at the very end, you can either just keep the docks like this, or if you want to be able to access the water, you can change that into stairs instead. We can do the same thing here for the opposite side. Again, it's always nice to have some extra ways to get in and out of the water. We want to have our railings here, leave the middle one open, and then railings across these sides. We don't want to have them underneath. We can continue this all the way, leave the middle open there, and then of course along those sides again. And that gives us a nice little dock that you can either use to park a water tank, park your ship, or just get onto the building again if you've fallen into the ocean. So here on the other side, we're going for a slightly different approach. We want to make this platform 2 by 3, starting from the middle and going only to this one side. We want to have our beams around the very edge, and of course our half pillars just like this to give it a little bit of shape. And then we can take out our staircase all the way down into the water, add the railing across it, and do the same thing over here. Of course, integrating it there as well with some of these half pillars. Then to give a little bit more shape to the platform, we can kind of make sure that we have a half pillar on each of those supports that we can see around the outer edges. This just gives it a little bit more character and makes it all a little bit more integrated with your build, and it's a great way just to also add in some like supports. Here we want to have the 2 just because we start that platform there, but yeah, we can go all the way around, adding in these half pillars like this. And then over here we can actually use those thatch railings again to secure the platform, leave it open wherever there's a ladder so that you can still use that, of course. But for the rest of the platform, it can be really nice and a little bit safer to make sure that we have the railings going all the way around the edges, and of course continue that until we've completely circled around the build. So the same over here, we want to make sure we add in all of these railings. There we go. Almost gone around and done it. There we are. So this is the way that we can secure the platform, making sure that it all looks nice. You definitely want to add a bunch of clutter and detail to really bring it to life and make it feel more like a proper pirate base. But of course, the advantage of using the ocean platforms, it's also quite easy to add a water pen down below. Before we do that, we have a few final additions here. We want to make sure that these platforms are supported, so we can add in some scaffolding underneath to make it look a little bit nicer. If you want to, of course, you can add even more, but that's kind of the bare minimum. And then over here, we want to do the same thing. So the scaffolding right over there, and then the same here too. Adding in those supports like that to make sure that it all looks like it's being properly held up. And for some more additional details, we can also add in some beams around the edge of the balcony just to look a little bit stronger. And then it also means we can add the scaffolding pieces at the front there just to kind of complete that. Now, depending on how far along you are in your playthrough, there's of course different ways to add a water pen underneath. By far the quickest one would be to do vacuum compartments underneath that you can then fill with water so that you can still swim in and out of them. Yeah, that's by far going to be the easiest one. But for this one, since we're using mostly like wood and thatch up here, so it's kind of easy accessible, except the platforms themselves, we're going to use at least a stone tier down here. Technically, you want to make this as strong, of course, as possible, just in case something aggroes when you come in and out. It doesn't instantly destroy it. We want to take out our stone pillars. What we want to do is basically from these corners, we want to snap the pillars down. Now, it can be sometimes easier to actually place a pillar there. Then you want to place another one. You won't see it, but it's now snapped underneath. Then place another one, and then finally it should pop out the bottom. We can then remove the one that we have here at the top, and then here we want to have 4 of them coming down from that corner, and we kind of want to repeat this process for all of the corners. So that's the 4, that's the 2 over there. We want to make sure that we do this for all 4 corners here, so that we can have this coming all the way down. Now, wherever we've built something, you want to definitely be careful that you don't replace, oops, that's what I just did, the pillar above it. But in the worst case, it just means that you'll have to fix one of those wooden pillars afterwards again. But yeah, just having these extra supports makes that we have more snap points to work with, because it is kind of risky if we were to base it all off like one snap point. So yeah, you definitely want to do this for all of the different corners, I think, just so that we are not attaching this entire ocean pen just to one place. So yeah, we just want to keep this going a little bit longer so that we can have the support coming down from each of these corners. So again, we're just making sure that we get these pillars in here, and this is kind of the basic frame. Of course, you can go deeper. I think you can go yeah, 2 deeper if you wanted to. The size is definitely up to you. You just have to make some little adjustments, and I've tried to keep this ocean pen design mostly structure low. Of course, if you don't mind using more structures, you can definitely make it look nicer. But for now, what we want to do is take out our beams, and we want to kind of start connecting these. So here on the outside, we want to make sure that we connect the 2 ends with each other with having our beams coming across. And then you can probably guess it, we also want to make sure that we have those beams across the side of our building, just to make sure that, of course, we kind of have the skeleton cage of what the ocean pen is going to end up being. So yeah, we want to bring this all the way across the side, just like this. So this gives us a pretty basic pen, and I would probably skin all of these pillars to look like the Frontier skins or any of the other skins, whatever you prefer. Then we want to have some large walls here in the middle segment to kind of just close up these sides. So we want to completely fill those in. We can do the same thing on the other side, and again, I would probably fill these or skin these all with the Frontier skins, so they still have the wood aesthetic, even though they're made out of stronger materials. Unless you want to have entrances along the sides, you can just keep this going all the way from one side to another, because, well, depending on how many entrances you want, you will leave gaps, but we're just going to make sure that the sides at least are just going to be walls, because I think we'll have enough entrances as is. So there we go. That gives us a pretty nice start for the ocean platform. And by doing this with large walls and making it only 4 deep, it means that we'll save a ton of structures, because each large wall only counts as 1 structure, of course. So now that we have done the sides of the building, we're going to do the entrances here. So what we want to do is, first of all, bring across these walls from one side to the other. Then from the corner, we want to bring out 3 beams. We'll do the same thing over there. And then we can have a pillar going up to the frame of the water platform, the ocean platform. Then we can take out a large cellar door. We want to switch it to a hangar door, add one over here and another one right over there. We can then remove those 2 walls and add some large walls instead to make the entrance. And once again, you probably want to skin most of this to the Frontier skin. You can blend in some Wasteland skins, and especially these entrances actually look really cool with the Wasteland structure. And this, of course, will give you an entrance into your water pen. Alternatively, if you want to build a slightly bigger pen, so go down at least 1 more, you can also use the Behemoth gate, which is a 5x5 gate, which will allow, of course, bigger things to swim in and out of here. So yeah, this is basically how you can easily make the entrances. So let's do it once more. We'll have 3 walls over here, 3 walls over at the other side, then the 2 large walls in the middle. Have our pillars going up here, and then of course our beams going across the bottom there, so that we can snap in those hangar doors and at least skin those. But I probably would skin everything Frontier, as I said. And there we go. That gives us some more ways into the dino pen from all different angles. You can definitely fill the entire floor in with ceilings, but to save on some structures, I think it is quite nice to just use some of these cellar doors. So from the end wall, I want to place 3 of them down, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing here on the opposite side. There we go. And yeah, again, this way it just will save you a bunch of structures rather than having to do it all out of ceilings. Of course, here in the middle, it won't perfectly meet up with the amount of structures, so we want to just fill in that ceiling. Then we can do the same thing at the opposite side. But yeah, you can instantly already tell, of course, how much quicker this will be, and also how many ceilings you will save yourself from placing. So definitely I would recommend going for this approach, but again, you're totally free to adjust the water pen in whatever way you see fit. And then of course we can just fill in those gaps, and we just have to place the ceilings in this middle row so we can fill it in. Of course, this is done so that it still kind of looks aesthetically pleasing if you see all of the floors, and especially once you skin them to the Frontier skins and the Wasteland skins, it will actually look pretty cool. And it gives you a decent sized water pen built into your ocean platform, so you can safely house and breed some of your ocean creatures. And with that, we've kind of completed the whole pirate build, but of course, to add the proper character to it, you definitely want to add a bunch of clutter all the way around the base. So if we look at the finished product, the one that I built myself, you can see there is a lot of details all the way around. Now, if you're wondering where exactly I've built with these cool skulls in the background, it's over here on the map on Genesis, of course. And then we have a bunch of little clutter. So I would recommend getting your fish baskets out, adding some cannons. Of course, the lights from the Tides of Fortune pack are perfect. Adding barrels around always feels right at home. It's definitely an expensive way to decorate with the amount of cannons that I've added. But yeah, just adding this clutter, storage boxes and everything. You don't really have to use it as part of your base, but just adding it will add a bunch of character in. So I definitely can recommend it. Maybe some cages with themes you don't like. You know, the cannons, of course. And it's just kind of repeating it, placing it in random spots. You can make workshops, of course, in some of these overhangs, and yeah, just utilize things. The Summer Bash event has some nice fishing trophies that are great decorations, and that way you can slowly but surely bring a lot of life and character to the place by just adding these in. Now, I would recommend just doing this randomly, but of course feel free to pause the video if you want to kind of take inspiration from the decorations that I've placed down. Even adding the water tank from the Frontier pack from the Bob's Hot Tales DLC is a great way to add some filling to the open areas. You can make like a little open air farm. It won't be very efficient, but will definitely help adding that chaos and life to your platform, which I think is the way you want it if you want to go for the pirate feeling. And then the Tides of Fortune things, the market, as well as the bounty board are definitely some of the best additions you can make to add a bunch of character and life to the place. Then I've also have this crane, but that's from a mod, that's from Visual Storage, so you probably can't add that unless you're playing with that same mod. But yeah, you can see the chimney as well from this room adds a lot of character. This skull is from the Summer Bash event as well. There's a lot of ways to add just those little things, and all those things together, as you can see, make for the nice pirate chaos. So yeah, let's take a closer look. But if you want a full tour in all detail, check out the full video already made for that. We have a nice fire up here as well. That's from the Wasteland lights. And then, of course, the marketplace that I just showed you. We have the whole water pen that is now skinned with the Frontier skins as well as the Wasteland skins. And you can see you can house definitely a decent amount of creatures in here. And then if we quickly go inside, we'll see that we have a full base. Of course, we already have the Mega Lab out here, but we can fit in the Industrial Forge. You could technically also fit in the Replicator if you wanted to. You can have some tames inside if you need to. Do a bit of breeding, have some storage and crafting spaces, of course. Everything you might need. You can fit in quite a lot, and technically you can still easily add another platform or another layer in here if you need even more space. Then we have a little kitchen on this end, access to our balcony, of course, on the other side. Just adds a ton of character to the place. We have a balcony over here, but we also have a nice bedroom over here with that fireplace that we could see, just to make sure that you kind of utilize every little space. And then I think over here we just have a nice little tribe meeting room. But definitely lots of potential and lots of options here to make this base your home. And yeah, I think it embraces the chaotic pirate life in a very good way. So hopefully you've enjoyed following along with this build tutorial. And as always, if you enjoy seeing these kind of build videos and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate all the support, and feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd really like to see down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.